Over 4 decades of WRC competition has produced some of the finest motorsport machines the world has ever seen. These cars are capable of tackling almost any terrain at maximum attack, from tarmac to gravel, African sand to Swedish snow. But, like every category, some cars are just plain better than others. You wouldn't compare the Hyundai Accent WRC to the current i20 Coupe, for example. These are just the ones that we reckon really stand out. Some were statistically the most successful, but some have just made the biggest impact. If you do enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more from Goodwood Road & Racing. There's a lot of Imprezas to choose from. So, since the formula changed very little over the years, we've decided to pick all of them for this list. Imprezas won 6 titles in just 8 years. 3 Constructors' Crowns came consecutively from 1995 to 1997, and drivers' titles were added for Colin McRae in 1995, Richard Burns in 2001, and Petter Solberg 2 years later. That blue and fluoro yellow livery, first with 555 cigarette branding, later just Subaru Corporate, became one of the most iconic of all time. And the Impreza was driven by some true legends: McRae, Burns, Solberg, Kankkunen, Sainz and Mäkinen, to name just a few. Actually, in total, Imprezas won over 160 titles worldwide, from the Finnish to the Lebanese and beyond, and the homologation specials it spawned remain some of the most beloved cars ever. 22B, anyone? There is a good case to say that the Impreza WRX is almost as famous as the whole Group B era put together. The boring one? 52 rallies entered, 43 wins, 87 podiums, 12 world titles. The Polo R WRC is probably the most dominant rally car of all time. Sticking perhaps the greatest rally driver of all time behind the wheel just made it unfair. The Polo had an astonishing 82.7% win ratio and launched itself into that dominance from a standing start. Volkswagen had not entered a car in the WRC for 25 years before the Polo arrived. Setting out its stall straight away, Volkswagen pinched a disgruntled youth called Sébastien Ogier from the shadow of Sébastien Loeb at Citroën and asked Carlos Sainz himself to develop the car. The Polo won 7 of its first 10 rallies, clinching both titles in the process, and celebrated by winning the final 3 rounds too. That dominance may well have continued into the current high-speed era if it weren't for Dieselgate. Tiny Italian cars and the WRC go together like hot water in a tea bag. The Fiat 131 was the car that really kick-started that connection. While the WRC's first 3 crowns went to sports cars, the Alpine A110 and then the Lancia Stratos, from 1977 to 1980, the little Fiat saloon would hold fort as the dominant WRC force. The 1977, 78 and 1980 manufacturers' crowns went to the Italians, and Marco Allen and Walter Röhrl added a pair of drivers' titles into the mix. Compared to some later monsters, the 131 is perhaps a little puny. The Maestros at Abarth managed to extract 140 horsepower from the 2-litre twin-cam 4-cylinder engine. But that was enough to propel the 131 to 16 rally wins across 7 WRC seasons. Few cars on this list can challenge the Impreza for WRC icon status. The Quattro is one of them. This was the car that changed the face of rallying, sweeping away the rear-wheel drive status quo for a 4-wheel drive revolution. The Quattro was actually born of an idea for a military vehicle, and then allegedly signed off by Audi bosses after a demo climbing an icy Alpine pass with ease. It would go on to win 23 rallies across 6 years adding 2 drivers' crowns and 2 constructors. Perhaps the most surprising thing about the Quattro, capital Q by the way, is that despite its fame and influence, it wasn't even the most successful car of the Group B era. The original Citroën C4 was a funkily styled but overall pretty forgettable family hatchback. Until you stuck Sebastian Loeb in it. The C4 WRC is one of the most successful WRC cars of all time, helping Citroën, a company with extremely modest rally success behind it, to rewrite the history books of WRC success. Replacing the Zara, which had already started the process of changing those record books, the C4 won all but one of the titles on offer in its 4-year rallying life. That's 7 titles in just 4 years. It won 36 rallies, almost all in the hands of the French master Loeb, all while up against some pretty stiff competition from a then well-funded M Sport Ford team. So good was the C4 WRC that in its final year, former champion Petter Solberg entered his own private car and finished 3rd in the championship. The only reason the C4 stopped winning was because the rules changed, and Citroën switched to the almost as impressive DS3. Let's ignore how the Celica's top-line WRC career ended just for a moment. This was another mightily successful program for Toyota. Celica's won 4 drivers' titles, 3 of which came in a row. 2 went to Carlos Sainz in 1990 and 1992, 1 to Juha Kankkunen in 1993, and a final to Didier Auriol in 1994. In its career from 1989 to 1995, the Celica, fitted with a 2-litre inline-4 much like the earlier 131, won 30 rallies and dominated the sport alongside Lancia's Delta for over half a decade. It was also the last proper sports car to be successful in rallying. Saloons and hatchbacks have dominated the scene for nearly 3 decades since. Even its controversial ending was impressive. An illegal turbo restrictor was found at Rally Catalunya in 1995, resulting in a year ban for Toyota. Max Mosley would describe the device as the most sophisticated device I've ever seen in 30 years of motorsport. Other Group B cars have won more rallies in total, but none can match the win record of the Peugeot 205 T16. Basically a supercar squeezed into the body of a Super Mini, the T16 won 50% of the rallies it entered after its initial toe-in-the-water season of 1984, during which it won another 3. Group B was outlawed in 1986, meaning that the T16's title record after that initial experiment was 100%. It claimed both 1985 and 1986 drivers and manufacturers' titles, once with Timo Salonen and then that man Kankkunen. The little 205 didn't look much compared to some of its monstrous competitors, but the engineering was exceptional. Its mid-mounted 1.8-litre 4-cylinder was turbocharged so hard it produced 400 horsepower plus, which, added to some incredible handling balance, made it a force to be reckoned with. Perhaps as famous as the Impreza? The story of Impreza versus Evo is so beloved and woven into motorsport folklore that it often ignores any other cars that challenged through the era. But it's not hard to see why. Both were bedecked with iconic liveries and both had legends at the wheel. For Subaru's McRae, see Mitsubishi's Mäkinen. The Evo would stake a claim to have been the better car. 4 drivers' titles in a row went to Mäkinen, all while Subaru struggled to match reliability to the Impreza's incredible speed. But in that time, while the Impreza was taking manufacturers' crowns, the Evo only managed 1. It's that Mäkinen pairing that adds the Evo to this list. 22 of Tommy's 24 WRC wins came in an Evo. Through 4 or 5, if you count the Evo 6 Mark II different versions of the Lancer, Mitsubishi consistently won rallies from 1994 onwards, right up until 2002, when Mäkinen departed for the great enemy. The Lancia Delta HF and Delta HF Integrale are the most successful rally cars of all time in terms of pure victories. The Delta won 6 consecutive Constructors' Crowns, adding 4 drivers' titles and 46 rally victories into the mix. Drivers' crowns were secured for Kankkunen and Italian master Miki Biasian, and the Delta became the only car to have in the post-Group B era. As Group A flourished, freed from the shackles of its bigger brother, Lancia's reputation as rallying kings was only cemented further. As the lustre of Lancia began to fade in the road car world, the Delta's then unmatched successes kept people interested in the Italian marque. Another short-lived but ultra-successful program from Peugeot, like the 205 T16 in Group B or the 905 at Le Mans. The 206 brought a pair of WRC titles for Markus Gronholm and returned Peugeot to the top of the WRC tree for the first time since Group B, with 3 consecutive Constructors' Crowns. In 3 and a bit seasons of competing, the 206 won 24 rallies, and, just to showcase that the car was the star, they were shared out between 4 drivers: Gronholm, tarmac legend Gilles Panizzi, ex-champion Didier Auriol, and father of Cala, Harry Rovanperä. The 206 WRC also holds the distinction of being the final WRC car that Richard Burns would ever drive, before his diagnosis with a brain tumour on the eve of the 2003 British Rally. Those then are our 10 favourite WRC cars ever. But which ones should have made the list? Let us know in the comments below.